This episode of the Bloody Vegans podcast is brought to you by VegOne and the good folks over at the Vegan Society. VegOne is the multivitamin and mineral supplement designed by vegans for vegans. It was introduced back in 2005, updated in 2021 with an incredible new plastic-free package, and contains all of those key vitamins and minerals that everyone will tell you when you transition into a plant-based diet, into a vegan lifestyle, that you need to think about, and you absolutely do. So, what's in there? You've got B2, B6, B12, D3, iodine, selenium, and folic acid. So all of those kind of key ones you need to consider when you're starting out, or perhaps you've been here for some time. And it's all in a convenient once-a-day chewable form, which is super helpful, right? It's just £12.70 for 6 months worth. And they come in two amazing flavours. You've got orange and you've also got blackcurrant. Orange is a personal favourite of mine. I'm definitely team orange when it comes to VegOne. So if you'd like to know more and you're interested in picking up your 6 month supply, head over to thevegansociety.com, search for VegOne, and you can pick up some right there, delivered straight to your door. Enjoy the episode. Okay, cool. So, Sean, it's really difficult to sum up what you do. So many things. Like, your bio is so diverse. I'd love to get a little bit of an insight from you. How would you sum up Sean Russell and the things that you do?
I would say media producer. No, I'm just joking. No, I'm passionate about telling stories and connecting with people, and you could see that throughout my life. Whenever I had an interest, I created a community around it, a media network around it, and that was my hobby. And I've been doing that since high school, anything from wrestling, anime and manga, music industry, education, but those are all interests for me. And when I decided to go vegan, I took that enthusiasm and I put it towards my lifestyle. So now it's just ingrained in me, this being this person that goes to a place and it's like, oh, I'm going to tell the story of my experience here. You're quintessential vlogger, but for me, it's a lot deeper than that. It's about actually bringing people together, creating events, creating economic opportunities for the people that are making the community as great as it is. And that's what I've dedicated my life to the last 26 years.
That's incredible work, just looking across the gamut of things that you've been involved in. I was listening to a mixtape earlier, for example, just like listening to your mixtapes. Obviously, the podcast's incredible, what you've done with SoFlo, which we'll come on to. But let's start at the beginning, like from the journey into the world of veganism. How did that begin for you?
So that began around, I would say, 2004. I was getting into my health, looking for ways to optimize myself like a computer. If I'm hearing myself say that. I found these courses online that pretty much broke down everything that you're eating, all the foods. So it's like once you see that, you can't unsee it. So I decided to start eliminating things from my diet. First, it was red meat. Then it was dairy. So fast forward to 2008. I am now like, okay, to about 60 pounds lighter. And I said to myself, okay, what's next? So I knew there was a vegetarian coworker of mine at the elementary school where I worked. And I decided just to pick her brain. I'm like, okay, why are you vegetarian? What's this lifestyle about? And in the conversation, she talked about veganism. And it was almost like a checkbox. Like, okay, like I have 2 boxes to check to become vegan. Why not just challenge myself to see if I could be vegan? And of course, I wasn't really deep into the ethical side of veganism. It was just like, eat no meat. I can do that. So I did that for about a year. And then around 2009, and I remember it like it was yesterday because of the circumstances behind the event, I was going out to Los Angeles for an anime convention. And Anime Expo. If you're into the anime world, you might know that name. And that happened to be the same weekend as Michael Jackson's funeral. So it was just like a spectacle. Everybody obviously was mourning at the Staples Center, but every street, corner to corner, filled with news trucks from all over the world. And it was juxtaposed to kids, I don't want to say kids, but like people dressed up in anime outfits. So that was just an interesting sight to see. But anyways, I say all that to say I went out to LA, and if you know anything about the vegan scene in the United States, it's one of the biggest destinations for anybody that's vegan. And that's where I fell off my 1 year, vegan journey, because it's just, and an interesting part about that, and it speaks to the journey for a lot of people. It's like you could be in the place to be vegan and still fall off if you're not connected to a community, if you don't have the right resources, and if you don't have that intrinsic motivation to do it. And those are the three things I didn't have checked off at that time. So after that, I didn't like go into eating red meat. I still didn't eat red meat. I didn't really eat dairy because I cut off that for a while, but I was eating poultry, eggs, some seafood, things of that nature. It wasn't until 2013 I decided to give it another go. I decided to build a community around it, which is something I didn't do before, and that helped because I spoke to a lot of people, start working with nonprofit organizations, and then really understood my why for going vegan, and it wasn't just a challenge. And then from there, it's been smooth sailing, I would say, since that point on.
What was that why? Was it one singular thing that you can pinpoint, or was it kind of a collection of things, the kind of triumvirate, the three things that people talk about? Was it a collection of all, or one singular?
So that second time around, it was more still health at the beginning until around 2016. I had an opportunity to work with a nonprofit called Animal Hero Kids, run by Susan Hargreaves, and she just the way she showed up, her way of being, invited me and enrolled me into being vegan for the animals. Like at that point, it was more, oh, I'm vegan, and oh, bonus, I'm doing it. I'm not doing any harm to the animals. Cool, but just the way she described it and the way she answered my questions in such a loving, compassionate way, it was a contrast to what you see, what the media portrays as veganism. People yelling with bullhorns and throwing pain and things of that nature. Now, I'm not bashing any of that. I support everyone in the way they want to choose to express themselves. But coming into veganism, that I perceived that as being extreme, and I didn't really want to be associated with that. But seeing her, who she's been to jail and she, for a protest, and definitely represents aspects of that culture, it gave me a more dynamic representation of the movement. It made me want to dive a little bit deeper and go to these different demonstrations and do documentaries on the marches that are happening down here to know the people. And then that's when I went from being vegan for health, being vegan for the animals, and now I strongly say that I'm vegan for compassion, because I see that's something that even vegans, we can adopt. Because and we can go into that a little bit later, but to answer your question, I'm strongly vegan for compassion, but I did kind of go through, a journey to get to that path.
Did her kind of example, where you mentioned she sort of answered your questions with compassion. She treated your intrigue kind of kindly and brought you into the world. Did that almost act as a bit of a role model for what you were then going to go on to do with SoFlo? This idea of community. I want to bring people in, as opposed to here's the message in its kind of stark reality, and you're either with us or you're not.
I would say it helped. It was a seed that was planted, because around that time, I also was doing a lot of work on myself, going through different transformational programs, self-development, and it kind of just was all those building blocks coming together for me to realize that at the core of everything that I choose to do in my life, there gets to be love. There gets to be the intention of spreading love, spreading compassion. And I guess I'll elaborate a little bit more on that, because those sound like buzzwords, kind of cliche at this point, but it's cliche for a reason. There's a reason why a lot of people, when they go on psychedelic trips and take mother medicine, that they come back with the revelation that, love is the answer. Love is the key. The Beatles, all you need is love. It's because this world, it's so heavy. It's so heavy. If you truly take it in, no filter, it's a heavy existence. We don't know what happens after, the next journey we go on. And that can drive you crazy if you really sit in that question for a long time. So for me, I'd rather choose to just love every moment of it. Soak it in. Have love for myself, forgive myself, forgive others. But forgiving doesn't mean, I'm going to let you take advantage of me. And that's the distinction I was leading to. When I say compassion, that doesn't mean, let you take away my freedoms, let you take away my liberty or my rights to do the things that I want to do. It doesn't mean that if you rip me off or put harm to me or my family, that I'm just going to accept it. Compassion for me means that my intention is that intention of love, a loving heart when I move. And if we don't align, I'm going to set boundaries and I'm not going to associate myself with you because I don't want to pull myself into a space where I'm not operating out of a place of love. And it's a practice. Every morning and every moment I choose to be compassionate as a reminder of the alternative. So that's why I'm vegan for compassion, because when I see it, I see the opposite show up in my space, even within the vegan community. That's a reminder for myself to take pause and be like, okay, how do I want to respond to this situation? Do I want to respond to this situation? This person could be going through something right now, because I've been there. I've had my horrible days and I've not been the kindest person in the world, and if that person responded to me in such a way where they're yelling and they're being confrontational and hostile, who knows what I could do in that situation? Who knows how that could tip me to over the edge and completely ruin both of our lives? So I'd rather just be that change that I want to see instead of trying to force people to be the change that I want to see.
100%. You mentioned there that, you see some of that division that still exists within the vegan society, or not the vegan society, the vegan community. They're fine. In fact, they sponsor this podcast. But in the vegan community, you see some of that perhaps not leading with compassion. Do you see that as a central kind of challenge, if you like, within the quote unquote vegan community for us to kind of progress and move things forward?
I mean, I see it definitely being a challenge, but I also believe that we are where we're supposed to be for a reason. Because and then also another distinction with the compassion, it's more in your listening. And what I mean by that, I believe I make up that you could either be listening from a place of understanding or a place of judgment. And when you're operating out of a place of judgment, you're closing opportunities. You're shutting off the ability to really connect with somebody. So for me, it's the challenge. Yes, there is a challenge, but the challenge isn't fixed by telling someone how to be different. Yeah. The challenge is for me to show up in such a way that someone's inspired to be different. And so, yeah, the challenge is, yes, the challenge exists within the community, but it also exists within ourselves. Because if I were to sit here and pretend like I don't have some of that going on with myself, it'd be hypocritical. And I'm not here to preach to anybody. I'm just sharing my experience. And for me, I make up, if everyone operates out of a place of understanding rather than judgment, we'd have a really strong, cohesive society. And I get to be that change to see if what I'm saying is correct.
And that's the sphere you can control, right? That you can control your own sphere. Outside of that, you can't. And I love that idea of being the role model, being the change you want to see. Absolutely. Let's talk about SoFlo. So when did the idea of SoFlo Vegans come about? And for those who don't know, what is it? How would you describe it?
So I'll start with what SoFlo Vegans is. Our mission is to make South Florida a global hotspot for veganism. And the reason why we want to do that is because I've lived in South Florida my entire life. I've operated in multiple industries, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, and I've seen a common thread in terms of the way the community shows up. We're a very transient community because just that we're a vacation destination. We're already a global hotspot. And what I don't see here that I'm working on creating is support for the underdog, support for people who are up and coming. And you see that a lot in cities like Boston and Chicago and Philly. It's like the team could be straight garbage. And I use sports because that's the easiest comparison.
Yeah.
It could be garbage water, but they're still going to show up. They're still going to root. They'll probably yell at them and stuff, but the passion is there and whatnot. In South Florida, from my experience, and I could be wrong, but my experience being here for over 40 years, it's very much, if you're not winning, I don't have time for you. But if you're winning, watch out. There's a parade every day. So the reason I want to make South Florida a global hotspot is if I can, with all that being said, be successful with curating a platform that allows all these businesses and nonprofits to thrive, these events to thrive, then I can take this model and I can share it with other cities across the globe to create a global community where all vegans can thrive, where every city is a global hotspot. And that's the ultimate goal. So that's why I created SoFlo Vegans. What is SoFlo Vegans? We are a media network. We're a community. We do events. We do marketing, pretty much anything that we can do. Like, we're filling the gaps in the community. If something doesn't exist, we'll create it and do our best to inspire others to create similar things. Because, I'm not under the illusion that I'm going to be here forever. So I want to just make sure that this community is set up to win.
Amazing. What was it? What was the community like in terms of veganism when you first set out on this journey?
So there was definitely organizations around that were hosting events and doing awesome things. What we added to that was just the media component of it, the constant videos, podcasts, consistency in terms of that. So just put my spin on it from things that I've done in the past and just applied it to the vegan community. I came up with the idea around 2014, a little bit after I went vegan. I joined a group on Meetup. If anyone's familiar with Meetup, it's a platform where you can go to different cities and see what events are happening based on specific interests or niches. So I was in a group called South Florida Vegans for a couple of months, and the organizer stepped down. I already was running groups on Meetup. I decided to take over the group, rebranded it as SoFlo Vegans, spent the next 2 to 3 years doing some research and development within the community, start working with nonprofit organizations, and then 2017, like May or April of 2017, officially launched the platform. And then since then, we've gone on to host over 300 events, 300 plus events. I'm host and support over 300 plus events, launched a podcast, which we were super fortunate for our first guest to get Earthling Ed. So that really put a lot of wind in our sails. And we launched a magazine this year, did live expos. So you name it, we're looking to create it because that's my background. So that's what SoFlo Vegans is, from soup to nuts. And I'm excited to continue the mission.
I imagine it's difficult to pinpoint, but is there one particular aspect of SoFlo that, or perhaps an event or a specific thing that you feel really kind of proud of, that you look back of and think that that is why I set this up?
I would say it's, if there's one thing in particular, let's see. I would say just in general, the events. That's my favorite part of it because that's when you can actually connect with the community. And that's something I didn't do a lot of with my other ventures. So this is something that, and I've done events before, don't get me wrong, but for the consistency and the quality and the quantity of the events that we've been doing since we've launched, I'm extremely proud of that. And just to see how we've grown since we've launched. Like we just did a dinner event at a restaurant called Full Bloom that actually got #1 vegan restaurant in the United States in 2021. Wow. And we sold out like within a couple of days. So it was just, that was a nice moment for me to see like, okay, I remember when we didn't sell out and it was a lot harder to do it. So, I do take occasional moments to pat myself on the back, but at the same time, there's so much work to do. And yeah, it's so much work to do, but I'm excited that I get to do it.
Events, are they back on the road now? Did COVID put a bit of a spanner in the works?
Well, if this was any other region in the world, I would say no. But we're in South Florida, and that's one of the things I love about South Florida is like we are extremely rebellious, and it's not always for the best. But we've been back since April 2020. I'm exaggerating. Wow. I'm exaggerating, of course, but it's felt like that. But I would say cautiously, events are coming back, even more so than in the last couple of months. So yes, to answer your question, yes, we are back to doing events.
This episode of the Bloody Vegans podcast is brought to you by Veg1 from the Vegan Society. Veg1 is the nutritional vitamin and mineral supplement designed for vegans by vegans. Launched back in 2005 and rebranded in 2021 with a fantastic new plastic-free package, Veg1 provides nutritional support alongside a healthy and balanced vegan diet, all for an affordable price. With a 6-month supply available for just £12.70, Veg1 will cost you little over £2 a month and offers EU nutrient reference values, or NRVs, of vitamin B12, D3, iodine, selenium, B2, B6, and folic acid. Veg1 is chewable, it's affordable and reliable. You can take it once a day. It's available in fantastic orange and blackcurrant flavors. Super easy and convenient, completely plastic free. So why not head over to vegansociety.com, search for Veg1, and take your next healthy steps into the world of veganism. I want to touch on the podcast, if that's okay, just because it's a huge inspiration to me. As obviously we're in the same kind of area. Obviously, the Bloody Vegans is nowhere near the kind of level of a full community and network, and I think it's just awe-inspiring what you've created out there. But when you started the podcast and you started reaching out to guests, you got Ed Winters like first up, like you mentioned. You've had Dr. Clapper on. You've had so many different folks from the well-known folks within the community. How did you go about starting that and reaching out to those folks and being so successful with it so quickly?
It comes from experience. I've been podcasting since 2007, and I've worked out a process of reaching out to guests, especially with the anime. I was like, it all started with just like reaching out to them and being like, hey, here's what I want. Here's what I'm looking for you to do. And what I've learned is a lot of these places and a lot of these, it all depends. Obviously, like if I wanted to probably interview Earthling Ed right now, I probably couldn't. So I'm not under any delusion that like I have these people on speed dial. A lot of it's luck. A lot of it's catching them at the right time, and being strategic, like some free advice for anyone doing a podcast. If they're writing a book, reach out. A lot of times they want to just have a lot of media stacked up so that they increase their chances of becoming a bestseller. So your best opportunity to get the guests that you want is when they're pitching a project. Reach out early, because as soon as they start getting like the major outlets, they're probably not going to have the time to reach out to you. Have something interesting. Have a unique concept. Put together a deck. Make yourself look polished and professional. Sometimes if you look super polished and clean, they're not going to ask you about your numbers. So yeah, that's what I would say. Just present yourself as if you are a successful podcast. Be professional. Have a process in place, and then just go for it. If they say no, they say no. On to the next.
It's great advice. I'll be I'll be taking it myself. Absolutely. Thinking about over the course of 78 episodes, I think now, huge number of different guests as I mentioned. What have you learned throughout that process? Is there any that really stood out? Because I know for myself, every conversation I have, I've picked something up, and some of those episodes really kind of stand out. Are there ones for you that were kind of watershed moments for you?
I would say one that stands out was the one I had with Dr. Sailesh Rao, who wrote the white paper on animal consumption being the leading cause of climate change. And the reason that stood out is because I haven't really dug too deep into the conversation, to the topic, and I just found the information that he was sharing was so fascinating, and the fact that it isn't like commonly referenced within the media, it just led me to really look at the information that's being fed to us. So that, from a more paradigm shifting, eye-opening point of view, really stood out to me. But just in general, I just love hearing the stories of each of our guests of how they went vegan. It lets me realize that there's just so many stories and different ways that people enter this lifestyle, which, we could talk about a little bit later, kind of led to me wanting to write the book that I'm releasing, being able to share these stories, because we all have our story. I shared my story a little earlier of how we went vegan, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of similarities, but the uniqueness kind of shows the diversity of this movement.
100%. I'd love to talk about it now, actually, because it feels like an opportune moment. Let's talk about the book. What was the seed of inspiration? Sounds like it was a little connected to what you were just saying, but what was the seed of inspiration? What's led you to writing a book? It doesn't seem as if you would have had enough time to write a book. I'm just amazed you have. But tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so the book's called Pre-Vegans, and the idea is I'm coining a term to replace non-vegans, because I feel like non-vegans creates a barrier for people to enter the lifestyle. So Pre-Vegans opens that door and says, hey, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you. You're welcome. But you're welcome to come inside and check it out. And so the book is just a collection of stories that are actually taking from the podcast of our vegan origin stories and showcasing it with context and resources, sharing my own story, just to prime people into making them feel like they're not alone. I want them to be able to read Ingrid Newkirk's, who's the co-founder of PETA, read her story of how she became vegan, to realize that, she ate meat at some point in her life, and just to get people comfortable in that respect. But the other thing too about the book is just the first part of what we're releasing. The second part is an actual online resource that you can subscribe to get videos, snippets from our podcast, content, exclusive content to help you, no matter where you live, along your journey. And it's not even just for people who are entering the lifestyle. It's also for people who may need that support, who may be struggling. You can go in there, you can find out information about, vegan dairy products. You might have an interview with, a new company that's opening up. So it's going to be an expansive world that you get to step into. That's going to be that's going to be grounded in a place of love and compassion. So I don't ever want you to feel intimidated with anything that I do. I want you to feel like it's a welcoming environment, non-judgment zone, and you could just be you and hopefully fully embrace this lifestyle.
In the process of going back into all of these different conversations that you kind of had at certain points throughout the podcast and so on and so forth, what was that process of like going back into them? Did it spark almost a renewed look at some of those subjects, particularly as you researched around them? Did you start to think, actually, there's even more to this subject than I first heard, if you like, in that interview?
I'll be honest. I feel like I've had so many conversations, and not even just like through the podcast, but just in personal and doing the work and being effective in the community. I What I gain the most out of revisiting these things is just my commitment to compassion. And then by this time, this is a drinking game. Take a tea, yerba mate, whatever. Whenever I say compassion, play it back and just take a swig. Yeah, it just kind of reaffirms that how I get to show up. It gives me that opportunity to have entered into that conversation and see how that looks for other people. And then you could see that. You could see slivers of that in each of their stories. And it's usually because I'm speaking to people that have committed their life to veganism, made it their job, made it their mission or passion. So to see kind of what that first seed is, it's usually a seed of compassion for the animals, for themselves. Maybe their loved one was dying from a disease and they didn't want that to happen to them or their family. So all these stories just kind of, bolsters that commitment to move in such a way where I'm, proud of myself at the end of the day.
Is there any stories that really, really stood out? That ones that you think, actually, that one was quite unique, quite set apart from some of the others? Or were they're all kind of along similar lines, like you say, underpinned by compassion?
I mean, yeah, there are a few that stand out. I mean, for the most part, the ones I'm not in particular that I'm gonna tie to people, but a few that pop up into my head of the circumstances. We've had some people that were actual butchers, and decided to make a complete change, completely leave their profession and go in a different direction and completely devote their life to serving vegan food. You had people who worked on farms and didn't realize exactly the full extent, had that cognitive dissonance of what they were doing to these animals. They would love them, they would treat them like family, and it was just a fact of life that, we're going to take them to the market now. And I find those stories interesting. Those revelations, usually it's when they're eating food and they start to draw that connection. Like, wait a second, we have veterinarians, we have people who worked in zoos. There's so many different stories where it's just like it hits them. The hypocrisy hits them like, I say I love animals and yet I'm doing this. So it's usually just seeing that aha moment in those stories. That's like my favorite point, because it's gonna come, or else they wouldn't have gone vegan. Everybody has their aha moment. So just seeing how that shows up really is what I look forward to seeing in those stories.
Have those stories helped inform perhaps how you show up when you're talking to potential, let's call them pre-vegans, let's use the right term, when you're talking to pre-vegans in your conversations now? Seeing all those different experiences, has it made you perhaps approach, if you like, activism in a slightly different way?
Yes, I would say that. I would say in my conversations, it's more of a listening conversation, and just finding those beats of where I can come in and maybe plant a little seed here or plant a little seed there. But I find in that listening, they usually, and one of the things I notice, and you may notice this, is it's a very apologetic tone when someone speaks. At least to me, I feel like I feel like I'm at church and they're like giving me a confession, and I'm just like, whoa, it's okay. I'm not judging you. I'm interested in your story, and but yeah, it's making sure that I'm not coming off as confrontational. It's almost like I'm giving them room to come to me. And if they're not moving towards me, then it's not my role to pull them towards me. I want to like, I'm going back. I want to show up in that room where they're like, "Oh wow, who's this person? What's your story? Oh, here's my story. What's your story? Oh, that's cool. Awesome." And then if they ask more questions like, "Oh, I would love to know more about that." Boom. Then I'll come in and I'll start talking to them. I'm not in the business of chasing people. Like if I present something to you and you're interested, I'll dive deeper. If you're not interested, then you're not interested. Maybe you'll be interested tomorrow, but today I have a lot on my plate. I'd rather focus on people who are interested in what I've got going on.
Have you found that, that's been probably arguably the most effective form for you? Have you tried other forms in the past? I often talk about this with people when they first go vegan. They can be quite vocal. They really want to share the truth. They want to put it right in front of people and show them that, this is the scale of devastation, or this is what could be doing to your health, or this is what's doing it to the climate. And then most people I speak to, they sort of change their tack over the course of time as they find that approach wasn't quite as effective, or at least they only use that in certain situations. Was that your experience, or did you always kind of, because you started from these kind of quite compassionate roots with veganism, did you kind of land there quite early on?
Yeah, and I would say no. I was never. I'm not really a confrontational sort of person. I'm more strategic in the way that I speak and move. So what changed was the intent behind my strategy, where the strategy before was, how do I get this? How do I achieve this result? Through the work that I've done on myself, that shifted to more of like, how can I be in service to you? And that's my come from now. And then in my listening, I'm figuring out, I'm using the strategy, I'm using the logic to figure out how I can support this person. First of all, what are they asking? Are they clear on what they're asking? And if they're not asking for anything, then I'm just listening and then moving on. So yeah, I would say the shift, the come from has shifted, but I've never really been like, you got to do this, you got to do that, because I learned, and I actually through my career, I've learned pretty much how to achieve the results that I want. And it's usually by just figuring out what that person wants and giving it to them. And it always perplexed me, like, why people struggled so much to like get the things they want in life, or get promotions, or get these things, when like I figured it out like at age 16. It was just like, oh, the manager wants someone who can properly manage this. Well, let me show them that I can manage it as a cashier. So when the opportunity opens up, I become the manager. And that's worked like 7 times, consistently. Yeah. So that translates to, all right, I want this person to go vegan. Let me find out what they want and then let me give it to them. And if I don't know what it is that they want, then maybe I'm not the right person to help them.
How about that, taking those kind of approaches when you're combating perhaps the pre-vegan folks who are, spoiling for a bit of a debate with you? I'd imagine there's some people who still approach you with a little bit of, okay, this is the vegan guy. I'm going to ask him about, B12 deficiencies and protein, and I'm going to say I listened to something on the Joe Rogan podcast that said actually it's all right to eat meat, and so on and so forth. Do you encounter those kind of folks, and what's your approach to tackling those kind of conversations?
First, for any debate, there's gotta be, I feel like, for it to be productive and a good use of my time, the other person gets to be open to being wrong, because that's how I show up. I'm always ready to be wrong with my opinion, because ultimately I'm making it up. Everything I say and do, I'm making it up. I just choose this to be my truth. And if the person is closed in how they show up to seeing it another way, then what are we doing? If their intention is to prove that I'm wrong, then I'm not interested in having that conversation.
I think it's sound advice for a lot of people, because we can find ourselves getting quite, sometimes you get drawn into this. You're passionate about it. Somebody comes at you with their version of like you say, their version of the truth, and you want to defend. You feel attacked, so you want to defend. And I think that's great advice for anyone. If someone's not showing up looking open for the conversation or prepared to be wrong, then is it worth having at all? At that stage, maybe they'll come back to you later. I always think when somebody does that, there's probably something in their mind that is sort of, they're almost testing you to say, like, I kind of think in the back of my mind, you might be right. That's my optimistic view of those folks.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of it's trolling. I think a lot of it is that cognitive dissonance of them, doubling down on what they may know is incorrect because it's their identity. We just have, maybe another conversion at stake, but they have their whole life at stake. So they're it's, what they're going to walk away with, like, oh, you're absolutely right. Let me go change my lifestyle tomorrow. Is that what we're expecting them to do? So it's kind of like, I feel like the seed that I would plant in that situation is for them to see how I showed up in that situation, where it's like, I'm talking about loving animals. I'm talking about these are sentient creature beings and things of that nature. And then I'm going to yell at you. I'm going to get angry with you. It's like, okay, where's the love that you have for humans? So rather than me like feed into that, I just feel like, I guess we'll agree to disagree. What are you doing later? You know what I mean?
Love that. I've been following you online for a while, and you give an amazing insight into the cuisine on offer in South Florida. It always makes me think, what a destination to be at, which I guess is the mission, to make it this global hotspot for veganism. Are there any kind of favourites of yours in terms of cuisine that's popped up over the last few years?
So definitely we've got a big uptick in Caribbean cuisine. That's another thing about South Florida. I'm just thinking about this right this second. Like, we have the benefit of being the closest region in the country to both the Caribbean and South America and Latin America. So a lot of that shows up in the food that most of us take for granted. Like, being able to have really good, authentic Cuban cuisine, vegan Cuban cuisine, having Haitian, having Jamaican. I'm Jamaican, definitely represent that. And it's just be like, let's go to the 5 places have different vegan oxtail. We'll try them out. So it's like, that's what I would say is really popular. What I would say we're known for down here, like soul food. We have a lot of good soul food, vegan places. So there's a lot of different options and variety down here, and the food is really good.
That's awesome. I'm excited to try. I'd love to get over there. One of the things one of my favorite restaurants pre-vegan was a West Indian restaurant in Brixton in London. And it was incredible. The jerk chicken was amazing. It was kind of a bring your own place. So you brought your own alcohol and so on. And it was always a great night there. And I haven't been back since, obviously, because there's not many vegan options. So you've whetted my appetite for getting over to Florida.
No, definitely alive. If you're coming down, let me know. I'll give you the lay of the land.
I love it. Listen, can I just ask a question about the book, about the writing of the book? Yeah. Had you written anything to that scale before? What was that process like of actually writing it? Was it a difficult process to kind of edit, find the right stories and exactly the direction you wanted to take it?
I mean, the curation of the book wasn't really that difficult because it's really just another medium where you're telling a story, and that's my comfort zone. That's my wheelhouse. And I also produced a couple of books for clients in the past, so I was familiar with the process of putting it together. But what has been challenging and difficult is just, doing it, focusing on getting it done. It's a little bit different than like making a video or a podcast. Because, I just have so much, it's almost like muscle memory at this point when I'm making a video, just like, done. But writing a book, you have to sit down, you got to focus, you got to write it down, you got to get it to an editor, you got to this and that. So yeah, that's been probably the most challenging thing and why I haven't done it up until this point. So yeah, this is going to be a huge milestone for me. I have the utmost respect for, for someone who operates in all these different mediums. I have the utmost respect for authors, and I'm just excited that I get to join that community as a seedling.
Has it whetted your appetite for more, or has it firmly said no, not never again?
I already have my second book in my head. It's already
Really?
it's already done. If no, it's already no in my head. It's done. But no, I'm gonna continue to write books as long as there's topics and things that get to be addressed. Because here's the thing: I'm not just writing books. I'm creating universes. I'm creating worlds. And that's really what I love to do. I create worlds where people can enjoy themselves, where people can grow, prosper, and world/communities, two different words, but same meaning. But yeah, that's I'm excited about continuing this, maybe doing some children's books because working with children and because they're the future. Once again, cliches, but they truly are, and I want to set them up for success. I'm going to pass along as much as I've learned. Each of us has something to contribute from all of our experiences, and I feel like people do that with their children, and I get to do that with what I create. What I bring into the world is essentially I'm giving birth to these things, and then they have a life of their own, and that's the way I kind of look at the creative process.
Absolutely. The book came out, was it a couple of weeks ago now? Is it Feb 17th?
No, that's when we announced the book. But the book, we actually just set our final date. We pushed it back a little bit. So it's going to be coming out April 4th. That is the final date that it's going to be coming out. And everything will be released by then.
Has anybody had chance to get their hands on it? And have you had any feedback from those folks yet? Have you trusted anyone?
Not just yet. I'm still tinkering with it a little bit. So I haven't sent out any preview copies or anything to that nature. But yeah, that definitely is, once I'm energized to see what people say, what the reaction is to it once I send out some samples.
I certainly can't wait to pick up a copy. It's April the 4th. And is it going to be available globally? Is it a global release, do you know?
Yeah, it's going to be available globally, especially the digital version of it. We're going to be selling it through our website, also uploading it to Amazon. So I'm going to do my best to get it into all the different marketplaces. But yeah, our main platform will be our website. So you'll be able to order the book. Obviously, there'll be some additional costs if you're international, but for shipping. But yeah, I'm excited to get that out there so people can, it's set up like a textbook where you just have it as a resource. Flip to the page, bunny ear the page, whatever you need to do. But it's almost in the guise, and I'm thinking about it right now. If you know Tim Ferriss, he had a book called Tools for Titans. It's a little bit in the guise of that, but just mainly focusing on their stories.
Sounds awesome. And surely you're going to audiobook it. Have you got any plans to do that? Because I'd love to hear you read it.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, because the interesting thing about this is because it's actually pulling from episodes of the podcast, the audiobook will be its own thing. It will be pulling, once again, I'm pulling comparisons and stuff. But I love what Gary Vaynerchuk did with Ask Gary V, where the book was like literally a long podcast. And that's kind of what I want to create with the audio version of the book, where you get me reading the subtext to the interviews, but then it goes into the actual interviews themselves, and then maybe some bonus content, so it's its own living entity.
Oh, that'd be so cool. Like almost a curated SoFlo Vegans podcast experience. I love it.
Yeah, exactly.
Very, very cool. Very cool. Sean, it's been incredible chatting with you, and it'd be absolutely remiss of us not to tell folks whereabouts to go and find you, the podcast SoFlo Vegans. So where would folks head?
So the best place to go is SoFloVegans.com. You'll be able to get access to everything I talked about, from our magazine, the articles. We have a directory of all the different vegan businesses around the globe, but primarily in South Florida. And there's just so much on there, and you can check that out, SoFloVegans.com. And then on social media, we're probably the most active on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, but whatever platform, just search SoFlo Vegans. It's the same across all platforms, and you'll be able to find us and follow us.
Amazing. Look, Sean, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for all you do. The podcast's incredible. I love what you're creating over there in South Florida, and I think it will be a model for so many places around the world. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I look forward to making it out to the UK sometime soon.
Oh, cool. We'd love to have you over. I'll definitely give you the guided tour. Thanks. Thanks, Sean.
That.